to YouTube, so
Okay.
Right, thank you.
FYI.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so are we ready to call the meeting to order?
Oh, I think everyone's here.
All righty, then we'll call to order the meeting of the Priest River Old Town area, or sub area. And it is, I'm sorry, January 27th at 6 p.m. Jenna or Jeannie, I'm not sure who's going to do the roll call, but if one of you could please run us through that, I would appreciate it.
Minor detail. Here we go.
Sherry? Brian Donkey?
Present.
Teresa Eisner? Carl? Mel?
Here.
There it is. Okay. Susan? Present. Krista?
I'm here. Could you speak up a little bit? It's like you're not in the microphone.
Oh. Okay. Carolyn? I don't know why.
Yeah, we got Teresa. Yeah, she's here. Yep. I have to bring my mic from home, I guess, huh? All right, back to you, Amanda, or Brian, I guess. Back to Brian. That was roll call.
Yep.
So I couldn't hear everyone. It sounds like we have a quorum. Is that correct?
You do. So Krista, Brian, Teresa are on Zoom, and Mel. I got to scroll down. And Mel, and then Geraldine and Susan are here live. We have one in the audience. We have 3 staff members and my lovely wife. And then we got 1 staff member on Zoom, Amanda. So.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
So regarding the review and approval of the minutes, there was some discussion via email over yesterday and today. So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes. This is Susan. And this is Jerry Lynn, I second it.
So Susan made a motion to approve and Geraldine seconded.
All right, any discussion? Would anyone like to speak about the minutes in any more detail?
Well, I already said, the only reason why I said that about the Roberts rules is because this particular set of minutes deviated a lot from the other stuff, and the way I was trained under it, you don't put discussion stuff in, you only put action items in. So that's why, that's the only reason why I brought it up. I didn't know if you wanted to do it that way or do as, usually there's like a communication section where you can attach something to the minutes, but it's not in the broad section. So whatever you guys want to do is fine.
Yeah, and I do understand, Krista, that perspective as far as this is, this one set of minutes has become inconsistent with what the prior format had been. I'm used to personally, from a business perspective, providing much more detailed minutes. However, I understand your perspective on this. However we choose to proceed, I would just like not to spend a lot of time on it. So if somebody has drafted a proposal for altering them, then I think we should hear that. But otherwise, unless you have a strong objection, Krista, I'd recommend we approve and move forward.
That's fine. I just think it's having basically a conversation in the minutes, I think can open up to problematic things if we continue it. And I know you wanted to make a statement, you know, or not a statement, but that you wanted some definite clarity in there. And I think what you brought back was much better. And it was just a thought on my part. So you guys can do what you want. That's fine.
No, I see your point. Since we're not actually a body that approves anything, I don't think there's much concern about there being any sort of a legal, liability presented by it. But I don't know if staff or anyone has another opinion on that.
I wasn't involved in this conversation, so I don't know. I haven't seen the minutes that you're talking about. At least I don't.
Okay, then I would suggest that we not approve the minutes, since Milton and I are the two that need to sign them. I think Milton, you should decide if you're comfortable with them, and then if you're not, I would recommend that the staff revise them to make them consistent with the format of the minutes of prior meetings.
Okay, here.
I mean, so for the essence of time, my suggestion would be that we simply not approve them or take no action tonight, and then we could address them again at the next meeting.
So so she just handed them to me. It's just this one page you're talking about?
Yeah, it's the discussion portion in there that that I had just said to Brian and to the group that doing a conversation kind of in the middle of that doesn't quite go with the way we've done minutes before, and doesn't follow Robert's Rules of Order typically. There was some expression in the previous copy about more extensively about the subdivision, which Brian struck out of there. He revised it.
I appreciate that. I don't have a problem with this, Brian.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, if no one has an objection, then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. So all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, then the meeting minutes have been approved. So we can move on to announcements. Do staff or any committee members have any announcements that they would like to make?
I do have an announcement, but I want to see first if anybody else in the committee has an announcement before I make mine. I don't know if anyone else has anything. Okay. So I wanted to let the group know that a few weeks ago, I put in my resignation with the county. And so my last day in this position is approaching here at the end of this month, so this week. And so I just wanted to let the committee know that Milton will be carrying forth the sub-area planning until the end of March, when the project is over. And in the meantime, I just wanted to open it up to the group and let everybody know that if you need anything in specific from me before I leave my position, I'm happy to try to accommodate any sort of work that needs to get done before I head out. So yeah, that's my announcement. I just wanted to let everybody know that this will be my last meeting with your group. So if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to me after the meeting. So thank you. That was my announcement.
Well, Amanda, let me just start by saying thank you for all of your hard work, the significant contributions that you've made. And I absolutely wish you the best in whatever career pursuit you might be going after.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Amanda, you've been absolutely awesome and a huge, huge help. Milton, no offense here, you're gonna have some big shoes to fill.
I'd like to make a motion that we don't accept her resignation.
Yeah, I like that.
I second it.
I'll third that.
If only it were that easy.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. That means a lot. And like I said, don't hesitate to reach out if you need me to put anything together last minute. I've been working pretty hard with Milton and the other staff to make sure you guys are well and set for the next 2 months. So I think it'll be good. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate everything you've done for us over the course of the last 2 years as well.
Thanks, Teresa. I appreciate it. Thanks. Okay.
I guess one other announcement or clarification I'd like to make is I'm not sure if the community member in attendance has already spoken with the group, but I do know that there were some folks here in the community that were making people aware of this meeting, which is great, but there was also some misinformation. I think some folks believed that this meeting tonight was going to be addressing the proposed or application for the amendment change and I'm sorry, for the comprehensive plan amendment and zone change of the 160 acre parcel off of Spirit Lake Cutoff. So if that has not yet been clarified with any community members that have come, I think it'd be helpful to make sure that they understand that.
Yep, very good.
Alrighty. Then it sounds like we can move forward with starting to review the draft goals and policies, unless somebody has any other announcement or clarification, communication items that we need to address first.
Nothing here.
All right, sounds like we can move forward then. So yeah, thank you again to Amanda for helping to really get us off on a good foot and started with getting language drafted for this section. I did offer some suggested revisions to that. I was looking for two particular things I was attempting to do. One was to be a little bit more specific in certain instances where it made sense, at least in my mind. And then also to try to use more of an active voice at times instead of a passive voice when I thought it would be appropriate. So that was kind of my overarching intent. And then obviously we can now see what the committee thinks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I really liked your edits to this document. I thought that the change in voice was perfect. And then the detail that you added was really nice. And I did see that you added Krista's comment as well, which I really appreciated. So I think what I want to do today is just kind of start at the top. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read through this. I kind of just want to start with the overarching goals and then go down through the policies and make sure that everybody's in agreement with the content and then the edits. So I kind of just want to go through and clean up the document together as a group. So essentially, I'm just going to read the goal as proposed with the edits. So the first goal of our document is to protect the quality of water sources, lakes, rivers, streams, springs, and wetlands. I kind of threw this one in there because I felt like this was a major goal that we talked about time and time again, and I felt like it was really important to have it in the land use draft. So I guess I'll open it up and see if anybody has any comments about this goal, but if everybody's in agreement, I'm just gonna kind of go through and accept those edits and just kind of keep rolling down the document. So does anybody have any questions or comments about that goal or have any suggestions to change it?
Like it.
No, I think it's excellent.
I agree.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just gonna open up my review here if I can. Move these toolbars from Zoom. And I'll just start accepting these changes. Hopefully you guys can see that on the screen for those of you that are in. Okay, so we have 3 supporting policies. So essentially my intent for this document was to have an overarching goal and then have really direct policies that planning staff can turn into ordinances at a later date. So the first policy is protect sensitive water sources from the harm caused by excessive use and/or contamination by maintaining a low density of development in close proximity to such water resources. So basically, this is a really fancy way of saying that we want to reduce density around waterways. Does anybody have any comments about that policy or any suggested edits?
Brian, do you think that putting an acreage minimum in there would help more clarification? So like maintaining a low density, parentheses, 10 acres or greater.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Milton.
Yes.
So would it be 10 acres? Is that what everybody imagines around waterways? Is it 5? Is it 10?
You've got a couple of things there. One is you definitely not 5s. I would be happy with 10. But one of the things we have to do, and this comes under environmental health also, is making sure that those septic systems are away from the rivers or the lakes or the streams or the riparian corridors or the springs or any of those water sources. I mean, we're a really good example here. We pump way uphill, way beyond, way past, the river, away from, even though we're at the river.
Yeah.
And the Panhandle Health District does
Yeah.
currently have regulations that address
Yes,
that. I think it's a very pertinent point, Krista. I'm sorry. But yes, I agree that that's a pertinent point, but I'm wondering whether or not it makes sense to have any, I guess you're just saying that that's one of the reasons for the 10 acres, or were you
Yes,
suggesting that we
yes,
add language that would overlap with the health district?
We don't have the capacity because that's environmental health's purview to do that. But that's one of the reasons why doing something smaller than 10, at least that way they can get things away far. They have more of an option to get things away from the water.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yep. Understood. Agreed. Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and accept this markup and see what that sentence looks like. So Milton, in parentheses there, is that kind of what you imagined? Right after low density, greater than 10 acres? Does that look good to everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Is there even that such acres left anymore in the area? Near the water,
What?
like almost all the waterfront property is gone these days.
Right. There still are
There are still areas. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's plenty of parcels that are an acre and,
And being
in areas that are around the water that will end up being pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We are talking about those areas around water and wetlands. And so, yeah, that's a good statement.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's a good policy just to throw out there that we want to direct that development away from bodies of water. Obviously, everybody wants to live next to the creeks and the rivers and the lakes, and and there's a high demand for those tiny parcels along waterways. But I think Krista really said it well, that it is a challenge to space a single family home and a septic system away from waterways on small lots. So I think this is a really good policy to have in Priest River, where there's so many bodies of water. There's just a lot of natural resources. So kind of hinging off of that, the second policy we have is that so new development should be directed away from sensitive water resources and towards areas that are served by sewer. So again, kind of just hinging off of that first policy. What does everybody think about this policy? Are we good with it as written, or do we need, I know we've had a lot of discussion in the past about what a sensitive water source is. So Brian, I don't know if you want to kind of clarify on that. I don't know if we're like bottlenecking into something and what a sensitive water source is, or if we just want to make it more generalized.
Well, and I really struggled because my first thought is to strike this one altogether. And the reason I say that is because now especially that we're defining, better defining the first policy with a 10-acre minimum. My concern is, let's say somebody wants to develop, a homestead on a 20-acre parcel that has a small creek running through it. I don't think what we're intending to do is to try to direct someone away from being able to develop, appropriately develop that 20-acre parcel for that residential and or, hobby farm type use. So I'm concerned that I'm trying to figure out either how to modify the language of this second policy, or if we need it at all, because what I don't want to do is prevent genuine, agricultural uses or low impact rural residential uses.
Yeah, that really helped clarify. I wonder if we're just being redundant, because the next policy kind of further refines this idea by saying that sprawl around waterways shall be avoided. Zoning districts should protect these areas by allowing only low density new development around waterways. So I feel like they're both kind of saying the same thing in a different way, but policy number 3 says it better. We want low density development around waterways, not high density development. Whereas the second policy is making it seem like we want to restrict people's use of their property. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think striking the second one makes sense, especially in light of the clarity in number 1 and number 3.
Yeah, I think it's redundant and then confusing. I could see where policy 2 might be confusing to someone, that it may indicate restricting the use of someone's property and not trying to reduce development around waterways. So
Yeah,
hang
agreed.
on one sec. So the one idea I can't get off my mind is the property that the undeveloped sewer district that's on the other side of Priest River,
Oh, yeah.
where the sawmill is,
Yeah.
where all of those small lots already are, but there are some big lots in there. I just know that there's been conversations about some of those bigger lots, and so somewhere between these two sentences, you should address that type of lot. So something to think about.
Milton, is there a creek or something on that lot that's a water source?
Well, they're on Priest River, right?
Right.
It's that undeveloped sewer district that they put in, or that they created, but they never put in.
Could that be
So
done?
then would the first
property-
policy cover that?
Yeah, maybe so.
I think it's a pertinent point,
Yeah,
but I would
yeah,
think the
yeah,
first
yeah.
policy would prevent that kind of development.
Yep. Okay, very good. Yep, I agree. Thank you. I needed that cleared up.
no, really good thoughts. This is a really good conversation. I I tried not to be too redundant when I put this draft together, but I was really feeling like I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. So I really threw the kitchen sink at this thing. So I feel okay removing policy 2, knowing that we're covered by the other 2 policies, which are a little bit more direct in nature. So I'm going to go ahead and hit backspace. I won't accept the change yet. Just any other comments before I accept removing this policy from the document? Okay. Alrighty, awesome. So we've already talked about this third policy, which is now the second policy. So sprawl around waterways shall be avoided. Zoning districts should protect these areas by allowing only low density for new development around waterways. Is everybody okay with this verbiage, how it's written, or do we have any comments or discussion about this policy?
I'm fine.
I would
Okay.
say just for consistency, we might want to add the greater than 10 acres after low density again.
Oh yeah, good idea. That's a really good point.
And a question for the group, would it be more accurate to make it equal to or greater than 10 acres instead of greater than? Otherwise, we would be disallowing a 10-acre parcel.
This is Krista.
I'm going to ask the question, can they, if it says equal to or greater than, if they only have 9.5 acres, can they get a variance for that? So I would say,
Well, a
Well-
variance would, I mean, technically you could get anything under a variance if it's approved, but it would not be automatically allowed if 10 acres is the minimum that we're stating.
Right. And yeah. We're working on it.
I just wanted to be careful that we weren't intentionally precluding 10-acre parcels.
Yeah, we'll add that in there for clarification. I think it's better to just have it. If the question comes up in your mind, it's probably good to just clarify. So we'll do equal to or greater than 10 acres. And I'm just gonna accept these other changes so it looks clean. This is, I hate it when it does that. Okay. All right, so any other comments before I move on to the next goal? Alrighty, so the second goal that I put together is to protect farmland by allowing for the continuation of agriculture as a distinct land use and a viable sector of the economy. So we've talked a lot about protecting ag lands around Priest Lake. There are so many goals. I looked at quite a bit of agricultural based comp plans and sections of comp plans around Idaho, and there are just so many wonderful goals out there. But I felt like this one kind of was the catch-all, that we want agriculture to be a distinct land use and we want it to be able to be a viable sector of the economy. And I feel like it was twofold, and in that twofold it covers a lot. So with that, we have quite a bit of policies, I think, to support this goal. So I guess I just open it up to the committee. Do we have any discussion regarding this goal or any changes that anybody would like to see to this goal? All right, so I'll move right down into the first policy. So the first policy to support this goal is land use regulations should protect larger parcel sizes in the agricultural zoning districts in order to preserve agricultural uses as a viable economic base in the community. Is everybody okay with this sentence as written, or do we have any changes we'd like to make? Okay. All right, so I accepted that change.
So I hate to keep bringing it up, but I mean, when the biggest argument we have around the area is what's a larger parcel size? What does that mean? I just
Yeah.
think we need to have the numbers there to really help guide the county to plan this stuff right.
That is such a good point. So when folks think about ag land, what is a minimum parcel size that you think of when you think of agricultural ground?
Eee,
You think greater than 20?
yeah,
Equal to or greater than 20.
Yeah, equal to or greater than 20 is the comments here.
yeah, I agree.
That is a really good catch, Milton. I really like that. I think that we need to do this anywhere we can.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep,
Yeah,
very
that-
good point.
It's really good. Okay, I think that that really tightens up that policy. All right, so I'll move on to
Can
the
you
second. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you repeat that policy again as it's rewritten?
Absolutely. So the policy states land use regulations should protect larger parcel sizes equal to or greater than 20 acres in the agricultural zoning districts in order to preserve agricultural uses as a viable economic base in the community. What do you think?
It sounds good. Does this help us talk about what parameters are set in depending on whether you're in an R10 or R20 area or greater with regards to the herding district map? Would that have anything to do with something like that later on? Since we're talking about agriculture, are we talking about free range as well?
Actually, I did not address free range in this document at all. So
Okay.
if we wanted to add in a goal or policy for that, I think that this agricultural section might be the best section for that, or to just devise a separate goal. I know, Mel, you and I have spoken about herding districts a little bit here and there, and I don't know as much about them as probably the group does. So if you're thinking you want to add a policy to this section, just let me know and we can accommodate that.
Well, I would like to at least write something up and see if it's something that can be managed into it. It doesn't have to be done, but I think it should be discussed a little bit. So not today, but I'll write something up.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
To that point, Mel, do we know if the state controls the free range policies or if that is handed down to the local level?
I spoke to them here a week or so ago, and they referred me back to the herding district map and the county commissioners in the county.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
correct.
I'm ignorant to that, so that would be something.
Well,
we should research.
I'm going through the process because I live in an R10 area with new free range people in here, and I don't know if you understand the impacts of that. I understand the law, but not quite sure where it stands when we talk about a 20-acre parcel in agriculture or a 10. So that's all.
Yeah, sounds like that would be good to get clarified.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move into the second policy here. So the second policy states protect existing farm operations and farmland from fragmentation by discouraging the encroachment of non-agricultural uses. I had written in here that maybe we could name these areas or personalize these statements, but I think it does sound good the way that it is as well. I guess I kind of have Milton's voice in my head now about, I don't know, to delineate what a non-agricultural use is. You know, is residential type building a non-agricultural use? Milton, I don't know if you have any thoughts about this policy. I'm wondering now if it's just too vague. Or anyone in the group, if anyone has any comments about this policy.
I think adding a little bit more definition probably does make sense. And I'm trying to think of how we do that. Again, without falling into dictating how people use the land. But in my mind, a non-agricultural use would, maybe we could list examples such as
I really think
You
this
know,
is almost an
residential
area-
only.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
residential
Milton,
only.
go ahead. Well, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just thinking, right, because we have a lot of, what I want to be careful to do is not exclude, you know, homesteads and hobby farms and things where people, there is a residence on the property, but they are also performing agriculture. So, you know, somehow in my mind, these aren't the right words, but something beyond, you know, a small annual garden. So some sort of actual livestock and or production of crops, you know, in excess of a certain size, in my mind, constitutes an agricultural use, whereas anything else in my mind is a non-agricultural use.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think, I mean, non-agricultural is defined. So, you know, as being not engaged or concerned with farming or agricultural. So I think that that word might be good enough. I'm afraid if we start to define it, man, people just love to use loopholes, right? Or say it's not there. So I'm just afraid if we get too, we'll miss something, you know?
Yeah, this is, but that's not.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, that is true. I think I'm remembering now what my original thoughts were as I put together this policy. I guess I was thinking about the Priest River area and how there is a chance that we might not have time to create a map for Priest River. And so when I had made that comment that maybe we could personalize this to your area, I was starting to think in my mind how many different agricultural communities there actually are in your sub area. I'm aware of, you know, the Vay and Edgemere community where there are a lot of working farms and a lot of open space. And I guess I just wasn't sure if there are other spaces like that around the area that we could specifically call out. So if we're trying to protect existing farm operations and just protect farm ground in general from fragmentation, if we could lay out where that is, maybe it would help the Planning and Zoning Commission create that map at a later date. So that, I guess that's what I was thinking of when I put this policy together. And I suppose that's why when I just read it, it didn't do much for me because I had other intents for it. So yeah, I guess I kind of just wanted to explain myself with this policy. And Milton, again, I don't know if I'm getting too close to it and if keeping this just a general policy really is a better way of, you know, protecting that farm ground. So.
Yeah, Amanda, I'd say the way you currently have it written would cover any of those existing agricultural areas.
Okay.
And just, I mean, there are other areas. There are areas around me, right along the river that are agricultural. There are agricultural area, an ag area up in Snow Valley. And some of those areas. But Snow Valley, I think we don't encompass Snow Valley, do we? Not quite,
I don't
right?
know. I'm not even sure where that is.
It's off 57, on the left of 57. I think that's just into the Lake District. But yeah, there are other ag areas, but not nearly as significant as the Bay area.
Gotcha.
That's outside of our mapping district.
Yeah, yep.
Well, I think what I propose now is that maybe we just leave that policy as written and see where these others lead us. And if it comes up again in conversation, we can tweak that policy. I think it's better to have it in there than not. It's definitely doing more good than not. So I might just move on to the next policy if the group is okay with that, unless anybody has any other comments about that particular verbiage.
I think that makes sense.
Just a quick question about fragmentation. What does that exactly entail?
Fragmentation is splitting up the property.
Okay.
dividing it up.
Like 10 to 5 acres.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you.
Yep, we're good here.
Amanda, before you move on to the next one, I'm sorry. This is just it's a related thought, and I'd really like to not lose it, but it's something we should probably talk about after we get through what's already been written. But I don't know if we could just put a comment or something in the note for now in the document. But it strikes me that the current definitions in the comprehensive plan of rural property as compared to ag and forest are in need of updating. And I think we should probably address that in our sub area, and whether or not it gets adopted at the county levels is outside of our purview. But I find it really problematic that simply because a piece of land, in essence, can handle an on-site septic system, and it has low slopes, that's considered to be a good residential use, when in fact, being able to develop residences on much more marginal areas of land, at the foothills of mountains, where there's a lot more slope, where agriculture cannot be readily accomplished. To me, I think we need to clarify that and correct that current issue from my perspective.
Yeah, Brian, I 100% agree with you. And what I'm hoping is that we can get through these goals and policies, which will help direct the zoning ordinance at a later date and get right into those land use designation descriptions. So I'm hoping that our next, or your next order of business will be looking at those land use designations and providing feedback on that information in reference to your sub area. So yeah, that's the goal. That's the next order of ops. So Milton, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I agree. I think as we get through this, I think we need to address, but I think it's coming up, like the soils, the prime ag soils, and I think it's coming up. So
Yeah.
I was going to bring it up in this policy, but I see it's leading towards a blow. As far as adopting, something more clear, I think we just need to do it. Hopefully we'll have enough time. I would hope we do, that we can actually put a map together and create some designations. It would be best if we could write those designations for this area. I think it would help the planning commission. So does that make sense, Brian?
Yeah, that would be
I
great.
agree. I think there needs to be a clear definition of where those areas are.
Yep. It is. Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna keep rolling here. So we'll just leave that policy about fragmentation. I think it's serving a purpose. So the next policy on the list here is to create true agricultural zoning requiring a large minimum lot size to reduce conflicts caused by adjacent development that is incompatible with agricultural uses. So I think, again, I already know that folks are going to ask me to add in grade equal to or greater than 20 acres, or at least I suspect. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that. To 20 acres. So is there any comments about this policy?
Man, I just noticed a minor grammatical item with regard to consistency. We should probably just consistently use the term parcel or lot, but not interchange them.
Oh yeah. So did we use parcel before?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
First policy.
Okay, good catch. Okay. Any other comments about this third policy? All right, cool. So the next policy states, create a spatial separation and buffering of land uses, which will serve to protect existing farmland. So does anybody have any comments or questions about this policy? All right, hearing none, I assume we want to keep it and we like the edits. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep cleaning up the document. Okay, I'm going to go to the fifth policy. Agricultural
I
land.
have-
Sorry.
I have a quick, I'm sorry, I have a quick question. Well, I got it on my mind.
Yep, go ahead.
Is it okay? If I had a 10-acre parcel of land and I don't know if you can or not, but it's under ag. Let's say I got a tree farm, or let's say I'm raising llamas, or let's say I have a 10-acre parcel and I have it under a timber management plan, so I get a reduced tax for having it under timber ag. When we start changing these to 20-acre parcels, is that going to affect the ability for the individuals who own 10-acre parcels to still be able to apply for those types of ways to manage their land?
No, not at all. So what we're trying to address here is new development. So essentially any parcels that would be less than 20 acres in an ag zone would just be grandfathered in. They'd have the same rights as folks with the 20-acre parcels, but they would not be allowed. Yeah, you just won't be able to get down to 10-acre parcels anymore.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So the last policy we have here states agricultural lands not classified as prime agricultural lands or farmland of statewide or local significance should also be protected in an effort to reduce the overall loss of agricultural lands and farming activities.
Amen.
Yeah, I really love this policy. Does anyone have any questions or additions or changes they'd like to make to this policy? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just accept these edits. I really like the edits. And again, I know that agriculture is on a lot of folks' minds, just open space. So if folks have issues that they've come across and you don't feel like we're addressing them here with these goals and policies, just let staff know and we'll add it to the document. All right, so I'm going to move on to the third goal here. So the third goal I've put together states to locate appropriate areas for commercial and industrial growth. So I added this one in there because in the beginning of coming together, we talked a lot about where it was appropriate to have commercial and industrial growth. And I know that we have a pretty good economic development chapter, so it made me feel a little bit better about not going too crazy here. So I just stated a couple really simple policies, but before I get into those, does anybody have any questions about that goal or anything they'd like to add or change about the primary goal? Okay, so the first supporting policy states growth of commercial and industrial type businesses should occur within the area of city impact, where services and primary transportation routes are available or will likely be available in the future. So I kind of robbed this sentence from our economic development chapter. We talked a lot about concentrating those commercial and industrial type businesses towards the city of Priest River because they have the sewer districts and they have the proper power hookups for businesses. And it just seemed like that's more appropriate than having it out in the rural places. So that's kind of what I was trying to tug at with this policy. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this policy or any changes they might want to make?
Amanda, I was just going to say with the goal, I started to say something there. The way it's worded, it says to locate appropriate areas for commercial industrial growth. It makes it sound like we don't know where those areas are.
Yeah, that's
Am I just reading it funny?
No, you're not. I think that when you read it literal, it is confusing. So I guess as a planner, I read that the goal for your group is to locate those appropriate areas, and then in the policies we state
Okay.
where those
Okay.
areas are appropriate. But maybe I'm not thinking about it right. Milton, I don't know, professional opinion, is that a weird goal? Should we change that?
It's interesting.
It is kind of weird.
Well, I'm just not a big fan of the word appropriate. And I had this conversation with Priest Lake because it just,
What one
Because
person's
what-
appropriate is not another one's.
yeah, exactly. But I do think that the policies define that. So
What if we restated the goal to something along the lines of to limit commercial industrial
Yeah.
uses to those areas specifically designated for such uses?
Yeah, that's excellent. Yep.
Repeat that back slowly. Type that up.
I could only try. Yes, Amanda's got it. To limit commercial industrial uses to those areas specifically designated for such uses.
yeah.
And if I'm thinking about this correctly, then Milton, that means that any specific use tables that would be developed within the county code for the sub area would would account for this goal. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep.
The other thing that I think would be really helpful, and I'm not sure if it should fall under the goal or I guess maybe it should be a policy. I would suggest that we in some way define cell towers, radio towers, and similar such infrastructure as a commercial use.
Oh, very
I agree
interesting.
with
Yeah, because they're definitely not regulated as a utility, right?
No, they're not.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that's the problem. I've been racking my brain the last 2 weeks trying to figure out how to address that issue, and it just came to mind.
Yeah, I just made a note. So in our definition section, are you thinking like specifically?
Actually, I was thinking I'd like it to be in the goals and policies. I'm just not
Yeah.
sure which one it's more appropriate as.
Well, because if we list the cell towers as a commercial use, okay, so like give an example, it's sort of like what we were talking about earlier, we might miss one. So like we list cell towers and machine shops or distribution centers or whatever it is, if we miss something, that's a loophole potentially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's a specific.
I agree, but I think I'm just wondering if we can get broad enough in the sense of listing, say that, uses that include or uses such as communications towers, arrays, I think we could come up with a little bit of language, hopefully that would be broad enough, because I think you're raising a good point. I'm just concerned if we don't make it a goal or policy, it's not going to have enough weight to really ensure that it becomes a part of the code.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just processing that. So if we decide that cell towers or communication towers are a commercial use, how would that in turn, what are the effects of that? Would they only be allowed in commercial districts? Is that the intent of a goal or policy? Or is it to ensure that there's a public process when those towers go in? I guess what are you ultimately thinking about, Brian? What is the end goal for something like that?
Yeah, I'm thinking that one, we somehow want to create some sort of like a density designation to prevent them from becoming,
Popping up like daisies.
yes, exactly. I want to, I care about the public process, but quite frankly, I don't trust that to result in the right response, the right decision in the end. Based on the last few years of experience, I'd like to see a specific policy that staff can use when making recommendations to the commission on such decisions. So I don't know. I'm kind of leaning toward if we're going to define land uses and build a zoning map, I think we should be able to show what kind of density and what types of locations are appropriate.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thanks for clarifying. I'd be an advocate for creating a policy that helps guide the planning commission into creating ordinances that kind of lay out a density or restrict the density of communication towers. I think if we just say that a communication tower is a commercial type use, we still leave the door open. So that is really helpful. So what I'm going to do is just make a note here so that I can do some research later about different policies that might achieve what I think you are getting at. And then do some research later.
So Amanda, didn't Andrew Scott bring this same idea up with Blanchard? The density idea?
Yeah, I think he did something like
We
that.
might have something there. Yeah, I don't think they went forward with it, but they did talk about some goals and policies for that. So
They did put some stuff in their plan. So I'll take a look for sure. Yeah, good call. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think we might want to be sure that we're fairly broad with the language. Like Krista was saying earlier, I think we might need to have it include something like, towers, antennas, and arrays. I don't want people to slip through the technical loophole. And I think it's good to be broad because, we also don't want to limit, somebody's residential ham radio tower, but that's not a commercial use.
That's correct.
Right. So I think it's, correct me, Milton, if I'm wrong. I think if we're specifically referring to it as a commercial use communication, and then we can get into the plethora, or maybe we just say all commercial use communication systems, then at least we are above ground systems, maybe we say. That would kind of catch everything.
It's a good word. Yeah, I like that.
Including but not limited to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the idea for sure.
Okay. All right, I've got some good notes. We'll put something together and send it out to you guys. All right. So sorry, go ahead.
Here. Yeah.
Sorry, quick question on that first policy when it's talking about growth of commercial and industrial type businesses. It says it should occur within the area of city impact, and then it finishes or will likely be available in the future. In terms of the area of city impact, is that something that will kind of keep encroaching on the rural or agriculture when it's saying or will likely be available? How does that work?
I think that's talking about the primary transportation
Just the
routes.
primary?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In fact, yeah, we're going to work with the cities to decrease the size of those areas of city impact. So,
okay,
yeah, they won't be as big in the future.
Yep. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, I guess I just I tend to see as years go on, typically cities grow rather than shrink, and so that's why I was just asking that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good ponderance. Cities do grow and rarely shrink. But it's a pretty formal process between the county and cities as to where the boundary of the area of city impact is. And like Milton said, right now we're working to shrink that area so that it's actually more reflective of where the city might grow into in the next 10 years. So, yeah.
So Amanda, then to Carl's point, should we just end the sentence after should occur within the area of city impact? Because I would agree that the other language in my mind would, if I had a developer hat on, I'd say, well, then all I need to do is get some services, some infrastructure in place nearby, and I could make an argument that you should grow your area of city impact over to my nearby services, my nearby infrastructure that I've developed.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think the intent of the sentence was to demonstrate that those are where services are likely available because they aren't available out in the rural places.
But won't the definition of the area of city impact make that clear?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just redundant. So yeah, I would be fine to strike that last part of the sentence. What does everybody think?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Anonymous here.
What's that, Milton?
Yeah, it's everybody here agrees.
Okay, thank you. All right, cool. Let me accept this. Okay, so I'll move on to the second policy here. So it states that business development will be planned and managed to assure its compatibility and balance with neighboring development. So this is a really general policy.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any comments about this one?
Do we have a current definition of business or business development? I guess I just want to be careful that we're not addressing small businesses in general as compared to specific commercial and industrial uses.
Yeah, maybe I think we should probably replace the word business with commercial development. I think that's what it's trying to say. I agree with you. It's a little abstract and we don't have it defined. It's not a word we've used before.
Okay, yeah, I'd be comfortable with commercial development. I don't want to make it difficult for the average small business unintentionally.
Yeah. What does everybody think about that? Does that make it a little bit more in alignment with what we have in the rest of the document? Okay. Alrighty, accept those.
Sorry, Amanda, I'm going to jump in one more time. For consistency, then, should it say commercial and industrial development?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's better. All right, any other comments? Okay. All right, so the next goal we have here is to maintain the rural character of Priest River and Old Town area. So we talk a lot about the rural character of the sub area, and we do define it in the plan. So I just wanted to create a general goal that captures the intent in the form of policies for maintaining that rural character. And I felt like it was a good goal to just kind of have a catch-all, like when we're talking about what does rural character look like and how do we capture that and how do we keep it that way. I just thought it was a really nice goal where we could be very creative with policies. So before I get into reading off the policies, does anybody have any questions or comments about that goal? Okay. All right, so the first supporting policy states that land use designations shall be located in defined areas as provided by this plan. This plan encourages cluster development and prohibits amendments to the map that would cause a land use designation to become spot development. Extension of any land use designation must be adjacent to that land use type and compatible with the adjacent land uses of differing types. So this is kind of a big policy. This one's kind of personal for me because right now in our current comp plan, we do not have any policies that state this. So that means that if you are in an agricultural forestry land use designation and you're surrounded by it, you can come into the planning department right now and request a comp plan amendment and a zone change and change the color of your parcel, just your parcel, to be whatever you think fits in the current comp plan. So it's just definition based. So I really felt like it skirts the intent of comprehensive plans to not have a policy like this. It would mean that you have to be adjacent to something in order to be eligible to even be able to be that designation. So that's where I was going with this policy. It's a big loophole in our current comp plan, and so I kind of wanted to close that loop for the sub area.
Yeah, I agree, Amanda. That's a really important point. And the reason I added that part to the very last sentence was because I also want to be careful that people can't just, you know, buy all the parcels around an existing higher density, you know, designation of area that's already had that zone change, and then just keep growing it, you know, growing the bullseye, if you will, growing the spot without consideration for the differing land use types that are also adjacent.
Yeah, I think that was a good addition for sure. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about this policy?
No, I think it's excellent.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll just keep on rolling here. So the next policy states, land uses should be consistent and compatible with existing development and blend with existing communities. Again, I think that this is kind of hinging off the last policy. I really wanted to hit home that things have to be compatible with each other, and that it's not just like a smorgasbord where you get to come up and open up the comp plan and pick which one you want to be in based off of your investment, that there's an intent to these plans. So we want to make sure that land uses are consistent and compatible with each other. They're not just random, and that there are buffers between ag to rural, and then from rural to higher density housing like our suburban zoning. There really should be gradients in between zones so that we don't have conflicts of land use. So that's what this policy is kind of tugging at. So does anybody have any questions or comments about this one? Okay, I think it's pretty straightforward. So the third policy states land use regulations shall foster compact development patterns that minimize the conversion of open space and rural lands into suburban-like density housing. So again, the intent of this policy kind of hinges off the last, and it's to encourage that development stays with like development, that you have a pattern to the landscape. Not a pattern that's city-like or suburban-like, but that is random enough to be rural, but compact enough to feel like we're protecting that open space, and that there's rhyme or reason to keeping places rural versus suburban, if that makes sense. It's definitely a fine line. We definitely talk about fine lines a lot in people's interpretation of this, but I think it's a good general policy. Does anyone have any comments about this one or anything they might want to change? Or if these start to get too redundant and you want me to get rid of some of them, again, I threw the sink at this thing. We can totally strike some of these policies. They are a little bit redundant, but I just wanted to add them in there.
I think it makes sense, Amanda, and I'm just wondering if, again, for clarity, at the end of this sentence, we want to indicate that the suburban-like density housing, maybe when we want to define that is, parcels less than 10 acres.
Yeah, that's a good point. So is suburban less than 10 acres to people, or is it, I guess it would be in a rural place.
Or how about this, Brian? How about define suburban like density, like how many units per acre or how many, yeah. So, units per 5 acres or units per 10 acres. Because you're talking about compact development patterns. So if I have a 10-acre parcel, then I want that 10-acre parcel to stay together, and I'm gonna conserve open space and compact that density, right?
I would agree that ultimately density is a way we could define it as compared to parcel size.
Yeah.
So is suburban like density to folks 1 house per 5 acres? Or is it 1 house, 1 house per 10 acres?
Well, one of the challenges here is when you're starting to talk about density, and we've now got the RV hookup thing, and you have, is it 1 house with an ADU and an RV hookup on 5 acres?
It's per minimum lot size. So it depends on your zone. If you're in a 20-acre zone, it would be 1 house, an ADU, and an RV on 20.
Right.
If you're in a 5, it's the same. Yeah.
Right.
So I know when I think of suburban, I immediately think of solar acres where the minimum lot size is 1 acre. And I mean, and they're just crammed in there. That's what comes to my mind.
So this sentence to me talks about, conservation subdivision. Right, where you group the housing together and move the
Yeah.
density around. So where there's density bonuses for the open space, right?
Yeah,
So
it does tug at that. Mhm.
An idea. Well, it needs to.
Well, I think part of the challenge is we're still, I believe from past conversations, we do want to have, clustered or higher density development in a thoughtful, patterned way when it's going to occur. But we still want to make sure that we're not encouraging that to get dropped into the middle of a truly rural area. There's no purpose served in doing that, because you've not only then diminished the value of the surrounding rural context, but that specific development is in and of itself not rural.
Man, that is really well said, because we talk about conservation subdivisions and PUDs. You may want to call those types of uses out specifically, because you're right. You pull up a 40-acre parcel and drop a PUD in the middle of it, and it because of zoning and because of the PUD ordinance, it just really opens it up. So,
yeah, I personally have a lot of concerns about those types of developments in rural areas. I think they make a lot of sense when you're already, when you're developing land in an already high density region, but to do that out in the middle of the countryside, it does a disservice to both types of land use, in my opinion.
yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So
So maybe that needs to say suburban like areas, right? So it's neighboring. So this goes into those types of areas, not into the agricultural areas.
So you're saying get rid of like density housing and put suburban like areas.
Yeah, with what? I don't know, offering with urban services or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just reading it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe after that, we could give examples, you know, the good old including but not limited to, and then list some of those development types that Milton was mentioning.
Guys, I don't want to sound ignorant, but I'm going to. I think of a PUD as a public utility district. Can you guys tell me what a PUD is?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a planned unit development, i.e. it's
Gotcha.
a yeah, what we just usually refer to as, you know, as a residential development where somebody's come in and they've subdivided it down into a plat map and they bring in all the infrastructure and everything and develop that parcel into a series of residential homes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Schweitzer is a PUD, Stone Ridge is a PUD, yeah, Schweitzer Mountain. So,
Solar Acres is a PUD. I guess that's a good one.
yeah, I like that. I think that this is better defined and gets to the point a little quicker. Okay, so it reads now, land use regulations shall foster compact development patterns that minimize the conversion of open space and rural lands into suburban-like areas, including but not limited to PUDs and conservation subdivisions. I think that reads pretty good. Any other comments? Okay. All right, so we'll just roll into the next policy here. Oops, sorry. So the next policy states, protect the character of residential neighborhoods by precluding the encroachment of incompatible land uses and minimizing adverse impacts on natural resources. So we have quite a few policies that kind of already talk about this. So it's a little redundant, but again, I don't think it's necessarily bad to be redundant. Does anybody have any comments about this policy?
Amanda, I don't think it's redundant because in this case, it's actually, instead of speaking to the protection of agricultural lands, it's speaking to the protection of neighborhoods, of residences. And we are trying to be fair and balanced in the importance of both. So I think it's addressing a different land use than what we've done so up to this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even catch that. Yeah. Any other comments from folks about this policy? Okay. So we'll get into the last policy here, which states transitional zoning should be used to act as a buffer between land uses of differing types and intensities to harmonize rural residential lifestyles and agricultural practices in the rural areas. I think this is a really good policy. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this policy or the verbiage? Okay. And I think that's it. That's the end. Pretty good. 7 o'clock.
Great
We got
job.
all of that. Yeah. So-
So can I jump in real quick,
Yeah.
Amanda? So to continue forward, I hope that by going through this practice, you start to see those definitions coming together, right? The land use definition or designations, right? So what Amanda could do is send out a copy of the current land use designations, or do you have some picked out already?
No, I really don't have any picked out. It's it's kind of been a challenging process to go through the land use designations with all the groups, and they've all handled it so differently that I think with your group, I do want to start with our current comp plan, and I might just send out a Word version of what's in the current comp plan, and we can start with that and talk about that. It sounds like Brian's already been doing some homework and has educated himself on that process, so we might not have such a hard time of using that as a starting point and kind of building off of that. I don't know, any thoughts from the committee or Milton, anything that you guys want me to do? I mean, I can come up with a draft specific to Priest River, or you guys can take a look at what's in the current comp plan and we can start by providing feedback on what we already have in the comp plan. I'm open either way.
I love the idea if you have something in mind as a draft that utilizes that while we also look at the current comp plan. I don't know if that makes any sense, but this was between your stuff and Brian's edits and stuff. This really was terrific tonight.
Yeah, Krista, what you say definitely makes sense. I can do both. So I can send a copy of the definitions in the current comp plan and then a sort of template draft that the group can use to add to that. So we can steal verbiage from the current comp plan while also filling out, you know, Priest River's own land use descriptions. So why don't I do that? I'll just send out both and folks can paw through it and see what they want to use and see what they come up with, maybe marry the two documents.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm fine with that.
Thank
And
you.
I would encourage folks when they look at it to try to assess it or you know, filter it through the lens of when you drive through our community and you look at the ways land is being used well, you know, it's being put to good use. Think about what types of land conditions are the most supportive of each type of use, and which types of land conditions are really prevent that type of use. Because I think what we're going to want to do is maybe, and you know, please, Milton and Amanda, let me know if you think I'm off base, but I think what we want to do is define both the ideal or most appropriate natural conditions that support a particular use, and define those items that would prevent or preclude that type of use, so that it's really detailed enough that these proposed zone changes would have to be, like, we would really have had to miss something in our mapping for someone to come in later on and get approval to make a zone change.
Well, and before that though, even the comp plan change is also the challenge. So when I agree with that, and then to further that, I think that the words should describe the area, right? I mean, like when we were talking about, I want to scroll up. When we were talking about commercial, I mean, in my mind, I know exactly where that is, right? I know exactly what that looks like. And so in the agricultural lands, because we've been studying the map and because I've been touring some of these areas, I'm getting a picture of what that means. And that's what I'm saying is that these should lead to a land use designation that draws a picture of where that is, so it can't be mistaken. That
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think we can pretty readily define those characteristics and locations.
Yeah.
For the vast majority, at least. I know there's always going to be some peripheral areas or unique land features that we can't address all of them. But I think from what I'm seeing and understanding with the last few years of comprehensive plan amendment applications and zone changes, I think there's just primarily it comes down to just poor definition in the past that's making it difficult for you guys to resist those requests. And I don't think there's any reason for us to not be able to define these well enough to prevent that in the future.
That's why we started this process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I will keep that in mind as I put together a draft. One of the main things that your group will probably notice right away is that I'm going to separate the agricultural from the forestry. Right now, in our current comp plan and in zoning, we call it ag forest. But if you read the definitions in our current comp plan and in our zoning ordinance, the descriptions really fit forestry or remote forestry practices. So I really want to get away from that and have a designation that is specific to ag. So that's something I'm going to propose in your draft. You guys can read through it. And if you don't like it, you can always put it back together. But that's going to be one of my first areas of focus, is to kind of separate those lands, because you can definitely do forestry practices on a mountainside, but you can't farm on a mountainside. So I just feel like they should be separate and unique. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of put that plug in there, and I will work on getting that to you guys by the end of this week so that you have it for your next meeting. So.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yep.
Thanks, Amanda.
No problem. So at this
Brian,
time,
I'm sorry for interrupting. I was going to ask Brian if you're going to apply for Amanda's position.
you
I'm
should.
not qualified.
Oh,
There you go.
I doubt that.
that's funny.
That's awesome.
We're still interviewing. We've
We are.
hired 2 people so far. The
Got
board
one
just
more.
gave us permission to hire 2 more, so we're still interviewing.
4 people to take over Amanda's job.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's how busy our office is. Yep. Yep.
That's funny. Cool. Well, guys, I don't have anything else. I know it's a little early, but unless the group has anything else they'd like to discuss or anything like that, I'll leave it up to you to guide what you'd like to do with your last 30 minutes.
Well, and just to update you, so you're aware that the staff report on that application comes out tomorrow, and staff is recommending denial on both the comp plan change and the zone change. We think that we've been able to capture enough of the comprehensive plan and the goals and policies. I mean, state statute says that it has to follow meet the goals and policies of the comp plan. It's really clear in state statute. So we think we've put together a good recommendation, and I know it's got 2 boards it's got to go through, but I'm pretty confident about the second one. I'm not so sure about the first one. We'll see. So,
That's really good news. That's great to hear for our area.
Yeah, I agree.
Brian, can you hear me?
A little bit.
So it might be a good idea for a motion on all these changes that you guys have made for this part of the plan.
I'm sorry, could somebody repeat that, please?
Yeah, I couldn't hear it either.
Gina was looking for a motion for the changes that have been made or the things that accomplished tonight.
Oh, I see, because I don't think we've formally accepted any of the work we've done to date.
Well, I will put that motion out that we accept all the changes as is to our comp plan.
Carolyn made a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Susan seconded.
Discussion? Geraldine, for clarification, are you speaking specifically to what we've done tonight, or are you speaking to everything that we have written thus far?
Everything that we've written thus far.
Everything we've written thus far.
I'm a little hesitant on the body of text we have so far, only because we've highlighted a lot of things that we needed to further define. I think we've got a lot of great stuff there, but I think we need to do a little bit of finishing work on that before we adopt that. I personally would be very comfortable with what we have written tonight, but I'm the body of the background information right now. I think we still have a number of things we need to clean up. What are your thoughts on that?
So she's amended her motion to include just the things we talked about tonight.
I agree with you, Brian. I think we need to go through and just sort of tidy up everything before we adopt it.
I agree.
Okay, then for what we've worked on tonight, should we maybe just spend 5 or 10 more minutes trying to get some language, complete language for the communications piece in before we adopt it? Would that make sense?
Yep.
Makes sense to me.
I forgot.
Geraldine, if you agree, would you like to withdraw the motion, or should we vote on it and vote it down and then?
And I'll re-motion it as soon as we're done.
So yeah, she withdrew the motion. She'll re-motion later.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
All right, any starting points on this policy where we address the density of communication towers, antennas, and antenna arrays? So I'm gonna just add some of that verbiage in here so I don't forget while you guys think about it.
Did we want to refer to it as
The,
above
under the-
ground communication devices and systems?
Sorry, it kind of broke out. Brian, you said something ground? What?
I was wondering if we wanted to refer to it as above ground communication systems and devices.
I like that.
Commercial.
Oh, commercial, not communication?
Well, we need to make sure that we don't no pun intended, we don't want to hamstring the home ham radio operators.
Good point. So it should be above ground commercial communication
Right,
systems.
right.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes.
That would upset a lot of us hams around here.
So Amanda, do you want to pull up that goal that Blanchard put in?
Yeah, let's.
It's on page 14 of their draft, item number 4.
Okay.
And I'll go back to your screen if I can figure out how. What have I done?
Did anybody have a chance to look at the Blanchard plan? I think that was this group that wanted to look at it last time, if I'm recalling correctly. No?
Yeah, I've
I think we were talking about looking
perused
over-
it briefly.
Like, that's right. That's okay.
All right, I think I'm there.
Right there, number 4. I mean, this is pretty robust statement.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Oh. Pretty comprehensive.
Boy, they were very descriptive.
Yeah.
Well, it's Andrew Scott, you know. he's he's like Brian. He writes like crazy for a living.
What do you guys think about something like this?
I like it.
I mean, we could definitely at least use it as a template. And if we want to change the amount of footages in there or put height restrictions or something like that, I think that this kind of verbiage opens the door for those kinds of tweaks.
I think that looks really interesting, that number 4.
It is.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, the first half of the paragraph, of course, is not applicable to our area, but it starts off getting into the details where it says a minimum of 8,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I actually find it interesting. That's sort of redundant or maybe not mathematically accurate to the last sentence that talks about a density no greater than 1 facility for every 2 square miles. I think we might be better off just adopting that kind of language. And I also like the sentence before that, although
Well,
I'd like to increase the distance to a residence.
I think it's so it doesn't cluster
Yeah.
because it's aggregate.
Yep.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You could have 4 facilities at the juncture of each of the square miles.
Right. Because if you had like a mountaintop, a hilltop, that kind of thing, where you didn't want it to be all clustered, like you've got 4 different providers clustering all in one area, you've got to look at it from the aggregate side.
Yeah, that's a good point. My question though would be, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is there anything we need to say about height?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Mhm.
Well, can I back up for a moment to the density and clustering item? I'm in my head, if we're going to modify the view shed in the landscape by having something like a tower on, a mountainside or a mountaintop, I'd rather see 3 or 4 of them near one another in the same location so that it's only that one particular view that's been modified than seeing them on 4 different mountaintops in that range. I'm sorry if anyone's offering feedback, I can't hear it.
Oh.
I think in my case, I'm just
I think
thinking.
we're all thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all just pondering the best way. It's really tough because I know that for these cell towers around here, co-location is pretty serious for a lot of these cell companies. And it's not easy to locate a good spot for cell towers in the mountainous areas. So one thing I do like about this is while it restricts where cell towers go, it also leaves a little bit of the door open so that they're picking the best spot for the tower and not needing to put up more towers because they weren't able to find a good spot the first time. I know there's a risk of that. I don't know too much about communication towers, but I do know in just talking to a couple of the techs who installed them this summer when I was going through a conditional use permit process that does happen. It's hard to find a good spot on open ground with someone willing to lease that works for a broad area of users. So
That one at Priest Lake, 300 feet.
Yeah, yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess that's where I think, right, because if we force them, like this language would require that it would essentially have to, if let's say they felt the need to put up 4 towers in an area of different types, they would be forced to put them on 4 different pieces of high ground instead of just clustering them in one location. And then we'd only have one infrastructure run, of supporting infrastructure that would have to go up to that tower, instead of having to do it in 4 different locations. And then again, we'd only be impacting the view shed of that one piece of high ground instead of potentially impacting the view shed across the entire, panoramic view of the area.
Right.
Can we use some of the similar language, sort of like we tried to do, that we did with the commercial areas? That they should be directed to,
Oh, I see what you mean. So directing cell towers to specific locations.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we could, but again, I think we run the risk of if we say that cell towers should be here, but the cell companies are like, but we need cell towers
Right.
over there. I don't know if we just open ourselves up to them amending document or, yeah, I don't know what, but.
But what'd be cool is to know the metric that they use to measure, right? Determine the best location. Use that as a standard, but
For sure.
we'll know what that is.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I know they use as a determining factor for making the investment to add towers, right, is the number of users per tower. Basically, they have a bandwidth or a saturation point where the tower becomes ineffective for the number of users. But if we are doing what we're intending to do, which is maintain a lower density in these rural areas, then the need for more towers really should not become an issue.
right.
Bingo.
Except for where they will make the argument that because we're in a mountainous area, that they need more towers. Because they can't, like we've got, we get to a rise here on East Side Road and my phone will ping, but then you go back down the hill, so it's like, that would be the argument. If I'm playing devil's advocate, that would be the argument that possibly they would make. Well, we need more towers, because we can't reach these people.
Yeah, and I guess that's where at some point we do have to decide if that's acceptable, or if I don't consider it a quote unquote human right to have unlimited cell service. So I think at some point we have to say, it's there's other kinds of, right, there's fiber-based infrastructure that can solve some of those problems. It might be a little less cost effective, but I think the trade-off to our community makes it worth pushing them in that direction.
Well, and
I
so
agree wholeheartedly. I'm sorry again. I just wanted to say where I am, there's no cell service. I mean, I forward my cell phone to my sat phone, and I believe that the more cell towers that spring up, the more development we're going to see, because I think that's actually why people are not moving into this area. Plus, I am surrounded by prime ag land, but there's no cell service in this valley, and I think it inhibits people from moving in here. That's my 2 cents.
Definitely. Milton, did you have something to say?
well, I like this wording. Because as we've had this COVID thing happen, the federal government has just thrown money at internet connection. And so, there's been talks about, running fiber out to an area like Garfield Bay and then putting it up on a tower and shooting it around town so they don't have to run the wire right through town. So So this needs to capture that. I mean, that's what they did in Clark Fork, right? They ran fiber out there and then they put it up to towers and
Yep.
that Conixu was shooting it to everybody, right?
Yep.
With satellite dishes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm on right now. Yeah, absolutely. That's what's going on. So, yeah, I think that this is a good starting point. I wonder if maybe we could import this language into the document, and then a part of our homework could be to do some research on like what might be appropriate spacing, because I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I have any good feedback for the group on what might be good spacing and if the spacing that Blanchard proposed even makes sense. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm for importing it into the document as a work in progress. Just, you know, take out the first part of it.
Yeah.
The Southwest Bonner specific to Blanchard stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And do we want to put, I don't see anything that says it's commercial, but we're probably commercial communications.
Do we maybe want to keep the first sentence we had started and just talk about the fact that those systems shall be limited, and then you get into the details?
Gotcha. Okay.
Also above you guys where we have a goal to limit commercial industrial uses to those areas specifically designated for those uses, that's really bugging me. Like, can we omit the last 3 words for those uses? It doesn't flow right to me unless it's me.
Yeah.
You see what you're saying, yeah. Uses and uses.
Yeah, I agree. Those 3 words could be stricken and it would make sense still.
Specifically designated.
And then just period after designated.
Yeah, that's a good call. Better.
Thank you. It's been bugging me since we started.
So Amanda, could we just, for that first sentence, say density of above ground commercial communication systems and devices shall be limited, period?
Yeah.
And then we could get into the definition of those limitations.
Yeah.
Do we have access to read this plan, you guys? Is it in the county docs?
The Blanchard plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the website. I just went on our website under sub areas, under the Blanchard sub area, and just opened up their document. So yeah, they're drafted.
Okay, and they're done, yeah?
Yeah,
they
they do their first workshop on the 4th, so next week.
I got.
They
And
only
then
did one
preschool, we
chapter.
all have.
Sorry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they only
I'm
did
sorry,
land
we're
use.
talking on.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
That's why they're done.
Yeah. They just focused on the land use chapter because they decided to conduct a survey in their area. So they based their analysis off of that survey.
11 minutes, so.
Yeah. So
So I think we can strike everything between where your cursor is now and then the sentence that starts a minimum of 8,000 feet.
I didn't know if you guys wanted that. Okay, I like it.
Okay, my battery's dying. I got 10 minutes left.
Okay. Perfect. We're 10 minutes to 8, so.
I'd like to change the minimum distance to a residence to be at least 1,000 feet. 500 feet is very short.
Yes.
I agree. Yep, I like it. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the language about camouflage and concealment, I guess it would be interesting to me to hear the group's perspective. I've never seen a cell tower that's supposed to look like, a tree that doesn't look anything other than ridiculous and stand out as a sore thumb in the natural landscape. I think it should simply be what it is. It's an eyesore no matter what, but to be an eyesore that's pretending to be a tree, I find even more offensive.
Yep. Yeah, the one
Well, I
at
agree with
Priest
you.
Lake, they painted it green. Yeah.
I've actually seen one that was a palm tree once.
Yeah, they have those in California.
That was just the silliest looking thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a tree in the middle of other trees, which I have seen, it's, I mean, or surrounded by some other trees, it didn't seem to be too bad. But
Okay.
I agree.
So
I'd rather have a fake
unplug the projector. So that means you'll have to turn your volume up. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm.
Oh, there goes our main Krista.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm muted.
And I will mute.
So what I'm gonna do is just leave it as a markup right now. You guys, it sounds like Milton's computer is dying and it's causing like a distortion in their volume, and it looks like they muted too, so they might be having some trouble. So if it's okay with the group, I will just strike that as something we talked about, unless the folks here on Zoom want to confirm that we're good without that last statement. I can just accept that change as well and get it voted through.
I personally would rather have a tree looking cell tower than a cell tower. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
yeah, I agree.
okay.
Taller than the pine tree.
Yeah,
Did she hear you? Are you unmuted?
I'm unmuted. Did you
Yeah.
hear what Milton said?
Yeah, uh-huh.
They're funky.
They are weird. So we can either put it to a vote, or I can just leave the sentence like this for now. It's up to you guys.
You can just leave it like that for now.
Yeah,
What if we just change the word must incorporate to should incorporate, and then there's some flexibility there with the actual permitting that occurs?
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
wait a minute, what?
Fair enough.
Instead of the word must, it'll say should.
So we're giving them some flexibility.
There's some flexibility there, because in some cases, Brian and everybody's definitely right. If you're locating a cell tower in the middle of a commercial area that's
Yeah.
got, warehouse and something else, putting a fake tree in the middle of that is like, nah,
Yeah,
But if there's one, if there's one that's in the middle of an area that might benefit from it looking a little more like a tree, it could be good.
okay. I agree
Especially
with
with those shorter ones, they make some short ones that I've seen done before where they're not supposed to carry too far.
Right.
Micro tower or micro something, I don't know.
Yeah.
So are we at a point now where Geraldine can make her motion again and we can all agree to accept?
Geraldine,
I make that motion to adopt it as it is.
Adopt what?
today's land use goals and policies.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Again,
Any discussion? Okay, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of accepting the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the motion carries. Do we have a clarity on our homework and or preparations for our next meeting, which occurs in 2 weeks, I believe?
Yeah, so on my list, I've got to send out a Word document version of Bonner County's comprehensive plan land use designations, and then another draft in a Word document for the Priest River, for your Priest River group. So I'll send out 2 documents. So that's what I have on my list. And then I had a bunch of stuff about cell towers, but I think we've kind of got that down and nailed. So yeah, I think just those 2 things, unless folks have anything else that they want to add to that.
Nope, I'm
Yeah, that
good.
sounds correct to me. Does anybody else have anything?
Nope.
So we're driving the whip here in your last 2 days, Amanda.
I know it's good for me. Can't be too easy heading out, right?
That's right. We need you to remember us.
Exactly. No, it's good. I've pretty much put together a lot of stuff over the last few weeks in preparation, so it will not be a problem. I'm happy to do it.
All
Well,
right,
you're
that's most
awesome.
appreciated.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
thanks, Amanda.
Yep, you bet.
So would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I so move that we adjourn the meeting. This is Susan. Geraldine seconded it. In the
Okay,
closet.
all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. All right, it's 7:58. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Take
Amanda.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.